Thank you so much for the invitation for this important conference. It's really our honors be able to present our findings. We are focusing on a problem gambling. We have 4 of us, and this is our collective cohort. Russel Herder is our statewide coordination for us and Asian Media Access, Progressive Individual Resources, Neighborhood Youth Academy, and Lao Center of Minnesota. We are the 4 recipients, and we form our collective cohort to combat the problem gambling in the multicultural communities. For us, before we started, we really like to really emphasizing between our cohort, we really talk a lot beyond just the problem gambling and the treatment. We really talk about what is that framework we are hope to establish. Like Susan said, this is a 4 years project, and we really hope is after 4 years, we would be able to present a framework back to the community to really talk about all those issues in a much more culturally grounded way. So when we first talk about, we're really looking into that definitions, cultural competency, cultural intelligence, and cultural humility. We're really having a good conversation about the competency. We feel we should replace that term. Instead of using the competency, we suggest if it's any possible to using the cultural intelligence. The cultural competency we see is you always set it up a benchmark. When you reach benchmark, you're done, you are competent. So that's what we feel this is not a good term because the cultural learning is forever. You always know the new things, you always evolve. So that's what we will hope is if any possible, we can using the term cultural intelligence. You just like social emotional intelligence, cognitive intelligence, IQ, EQ, now we propose to have CQ. The cultural intelligence made you continue want to learn, continue want to be smarter, continue want to know what would be other cultures would look like. So you always have that curiosity. So we are proposing to, instead of using the competency in our team, we propose to do cultural intelligence. And Dr. Oni adding another component instead of just focusing on the cultural intelligence level, but how about attitude? That's what he's starting to guiding us to using the cultural humility, using the cultural humility to really support each other, to really be able to be humble, to look into other culture as equally important as your culture. So that's why we really want to have this grounded theory to get our coalition going. And then we're defining all these different terms. We talk about the culturally specific, culturally responsive, and culturally integrated process. So the specifics is very clear. For example, Hmong American Partnership has done focusing very specifically language in Hmong and using culturally specific methods in Hmong to support the community. And we also see, for example, Wilder Foundation, they may have this culturally responsive practices, such as they having interpreter, and they are using a lot of the culturally adaptation of method to support. So that's why we want to see that type of culture responsive. Then we are discuss this bicultural identity. And that's why we're starting to really think about just besides specific, besides responding from the mainstream culture providing interpreter, we're really starting to look into that cultural integration process. How could we having two or more culture can be integrated together into the policy, into the practices. So it's not just design the treatment basing on the Western model using the vocal therapy, but really starting to look into any possibility to incorporate other culture. For example, Asian culture, it's just very hard for us to support the vocal therapy, definitely the language barriers, but also we're not seeing the vocalization. It's really not the virtue. We think silence is the virtue. So when you have those cultural differences in treatment, how could we be able to starting to look into that integrated process? We believe we should change to look into the knowledge base of culture, but we should change to looking into developing the skills, to asking good questions, to know more about culture. So that's what we are proposing, this impact on these skill level, communication, interpretation, and behaviors. And I think this iceberg concept is definitely not foreign to our participants. You guys use a lot as well. So definitely the 1/10 we can see, all the food, the dress, the singing, dancing is all very obvious. But 9/10 of everything about the culture almost are underneath the iceberg, underneath the water. It's harder to see. So how, when we deal with that type of harder, doesn't understand, people may not vocalize, what should we do? And we just want to also give you a couple examples, for example, of facial expressions, so and hand gestures. And those are things, it's a very a comments may create a lot of misunderstanding. So a lot of time when I go to the farmers market, I see a lot of the mainstream people, instead of uh, calling our Hmong farmer, they're using the gestures, they are using the way look like you are calling an animal, for example. That's so people feel very insulted in our Asian farmers. Instead of those body gesture, very easy things, but create a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. Or timing, time management would be another things our community got misunderstood. Um, we see the concept of time would be very different than the Western concept of time. So in the Western, people think time is money. So when the time passed, it's not coming back. But in the Asian and many Pan-African cultures, time is circular. Time's always coming back. The time is always there, is tomorrow. So those are the things so a lot of our members may be joking as the Hmong time. They may not show up at the appointment on time, may not starting the party on time, because the time is circular. It's always will be back. So that's why you don't treat it as time as money. You don't treat it as minute by minute, but you treat it in the much relaxing way. So those are the time you will feel why your clients always late and why they never just show up on time and talk a lot of things in circle. So they may not get to the point. So a lot of those are really the cultural implications of behavior. And that's what we want you to understand, the iceberg, and starting to think about how could we help the community to integrate some of their culture into the treatment process. And one of the things we've been talking a lot is the high contact versus low contact communication skills. And high context means a lot of things is not spoken because you would know, you should know because we are in this environment together. So a lot of things are not spoken, but depending on your interpretation of the context, or something like the low contact communication skill, like the mainstream, like some of those very direct way. You have a very logic way from A to B to C. So you follow this, you don't need the context, you depending on content. So all these are very different way of communication. Just like now, I'm not even get to my community problem gambling issues. I'm starting with this big pictures, and we hope is to having this big picture, we will build on understanding of that context. So that context we all share, we would be able to better understand each other. So this is a good example at here. For example, you may be tired and you drink Coke and you got energetic again. So very simple way, understandable. But in my culture, from Chinese culture, we read instead of left to right, we read from right to left, and we create a problems. You are very healthy running and you drink the Coke, you die. So very different concept. Just by showing this comic, you will be able to see how that culture impact on your communication. If you don't pay attention to it, will create a lot of confusion. So that's why we will hope is we not just talk about the knowledge of culture, but we talk about how could we help each other to developing the skills to be able to asking good question, understand the culture impact on the behaviors and the interpretation of a lot of different meanings behind the body language, for example, or behind yes may not mean yes. Yes may means yes, I hear you. But that's yes doesn't means I agree with you. So a lot of those layers and layers building by culture, we hope to be able to incorporate into the discussion. So problem gambling. Definitely, it's a serious issue among our Asian American community. So some of the study, 60% of the community member, they say they are qualified for problem gambling issues. And a lot of things we also say studies will talk about significant Chinese immigrants really exhibit very high level of problem gambling. But on the other study at the New York Chinatown, people feel play mahjong is healthy. It helps your brain develop and it's a healthy social interaction. So we have different research data and really paint a different pictures. Some of the data showing the severe problem and some of the data within our own community really painting a very different picture to say gambling may not be such a bad things. And that is the differences between the problem gambling and the recreational gambling. But how our community did not see that as a differentiation. Our community see gambling as part of the general life. So we have the Lunar New Year and family get together, play mahjong. This is so typical ways of the Asian American family socializing. So it may not be cooking together, it may not be play game together, but they play mahjong together. So a lot of those are acceptable behaviors in our community. And that's a different definitions from recreation gambling and how would be able to distinction that into problem gambling. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next. And some of the things we can tell from our interviews, people will say things like that. It's a family rose. Fathers will gamble. So it's really, it's make it as expectation as the things. This is a very regular normalizing the gamblings within Asian American family, and that's not unusual. It's not just the ocean participant. We talk about Vietnamese, we talk about Chinese families. They all share the similar ideas. So the gamblings is allowed and father gambles, and that's a normal social activities. And we put this a longer piece together. This is one of the Vietnamese families we introduce. And this family has a generational gambling behaviors. So they, when we conducting the interview, you can tell this woman is really remember the great things associated with gambling. They talk about how they go to casino at Las Vegas from couple times becomes 5 to 6 times a year. And the room getting bigger and bigger because they have become more important guests for the hotel. And then they will talk about it's so cool because they got the comp tickets and they got the buffets and they never spending any money. So this is really is word by word from that individual. And we can see instead of discuss about the problem gambling issues, but the individual remember the glory of that gambling, how that associate with their family life. And then we'll talk about they will receive monies from mom and they will go shopping. And the whole paragraph, you can tell they are talking about that lifestyle, and the lifestyle is desirable for this woman until even this day. Even she recognized it's a problem gambling issue, but the good time is what she remembered the most. So when we talk a little bit about this issue, so the first one, let's see if I can do this. Okay, so I will do, maybe this will be able to help us to see better. Okay, so instead of having this community in, so instead of having this difference interpretation about gambling, we definitely know that's acceptance. And we're also starting to understand that really related to the luck and charm. So in the Chinese family, we talk a lot about how they dream about this 3 birds, and those 3 birds will make them wake up, so they will go out to buy number 3. So all these are related to their lucky charm, and they remember it. And also about that perception of money. A lot of interviewee we talk to, they have a very limited resources, but they have a larger life goals. For example, we talked with one of the pregnant women want to really get out of the Social Security to be prepare more more resources for the newborns. And she chose to gamble with her limited money because that's the only way they would be able to reach her goal to accumulate that wealth for her newborn. And because it's so limited, so the lose is not that significant in her mind. And then the gain, which having that money is important. So that's a lot of time they are using that limited resources and trying to gamble may not because of the money, it's because of the urgency, because of the refugee thinking. I really need to build that safety net. So that safety net, that larger resources push them to using that limited money to get more. And definitely target marketing, you see the bus, they are coming, and really having that bus be able to go to the Mall of America, leaving from Mall of America to the casino site is one of the regular social gathering for our seniors. And say they don't recognize it's a problem. They want to save the face and not share some of those personal problems with outsiders. And language barrier, and also lack of a lot of Asian mental health specialists. That's one of the concerns we have. We've been talking so much building that cultural implication. We would really hope is we would be able to have that cultural integration process. So it's not just regular mental health treatment based on the Western vocal therapy, but really having that integration process. And we just feel it's a lot of time we see this addiction, it's really a cultural based problem. But unfortunately, a lot of time we asking for a culture neutral solution. And that's really difficult for our community to think about, to discuss about if we are coming with a cultural problem, but facing a very standardized treatment. Sometimes it's really turn off for them. So with the time I have, I would go through fairly quickly. And we have this use helping us to do different language um, postcard. At the same time, we encourage them to share with their peers as well. So you will see the Chinese, the Vietnamese, and Hmong, they all create by our young people, and they utilizing the heritage language and English and trying to support our initiative to combat the problem gambling. And they're using the different kind of tools as well. So the comic strip is one of them. And we also, as Asian Media Access, we developed 4 videos, and I would not taking your time to show the videos, but we definitely would love to share the slides and with the link to our video as well. And this one, the first one, I will win big tonight. So it's a really an implication of that lucky charm. I feel lucky today. So I know the numbers. I dream about it. I will do good. So that's the information we hope to incorporate into the video so people can starting to look into the issues and really see the problems and really starting a better discussion. And this one is a Cambodian chef stories. I don't need to speak English at the casino. So casinos, you don't need to speak English. You feel blend in, and they really be able to support that need of that recreational purpose. But a lot of time those change into more serious problem gambling. And also a lot of restaurant worker we talk to, why they go to casino, because they're open 24 hours and that's the only recreational activity they can do because that's 24 hours. And after they close the shops at 10 o'clock, there's no place to go and limited shopping, and they can go to casino. So that's one of the story we are going to feature. And also among seniors, we talk about, I just want to gamble. It's in my blood. That's a lot of Asian American belief because we having that family get together using gambling as a social gathering, and it's in their blood. They will always tell you that. And we have one of the seniors really saying, casino treat me better than you do. It's a lot of time our seniors got stuck at home, doesn't have any entertainment, doesn't have a recreational opportunity, but just become taking care of the grandchildren's, taking care of the house chores, and the family may not respect them that much. So they feel they get to casino, they have the free drinks, they are been asking, how are you today? Those are really rewarding for them as our seniors. So we incorporate that into one of our cases as well. And then we have another cases, we call it Where is Timmy? We are a lot of our seniors taking the grandchildren to the casino and leave the grandchildren in the car while they playing in the casino. So we have a lot of those discussion and cases coming through the interviews. People really concerned of it, and some of the seniors feel bad, but they think that's okay to do that because it's just 1 hour, and then 1 hour turning to 2 hours, turning to 3 hours. So those are the things we hope to utilizing a very interactive video cases so we can talk more. You see some cases and you see the dialogue, you see the situation. Hopefully that will inspire more discussion. So without further ado, I will introduce to Dr. Oni's teams. And before we do that, Susan, are we going to show a short video from the Neighborhood Youth Academy?
We are. If you could stop sharing your screen, I will share mine and we can see that video, and then we'll hear from Dr. Oni and Billy.
Super. I will stop sharing, and that's my contact. Feel free to email us. We'd love to answer a lot of questions and share more feedbacks with you all. And we will also have some time to question answering session as well. So
great, thank you. All right, now. So this is a short video that was prepared by the Minneapolis Youth Academy.
Susan, you may need to choose the audio. We cannot hear it.
Life and their relationships. As an athlete, the risk of even casual betting. Easy, but lasts a lifetime. Success is paying the fee of focus, effort.
We could hear it, and now we can't again.
I haven't done anything, so it's just.
Sorry, we know that you guys can't hear that. Bear with us here.
So apparently you couldn't hear it. Hold on. Oh, goodness. Okay, so a little technical difficulty. We are going to post that video, and so people can look at it at another time. So I apologize for that. So Dr. Oni, why don't we start with you?
All right. Well, it's coming to the end of the day. As it's coming to the end of the day, we would like to just give a brief overview of what we've been working on through the progressive individual resources. And with me this evening is Bili Banjoko, who is also the therapy and the session and treatment of gambling. So, like it's been said here, Progressive Individual Resources is an organization that really provides both social and behavioral health services to the African immigrant population, even though we provide services to the families of immigrant population, we also take on other ethnic minorities, especially the BIPOC group. And before this gambling grant for the cultural group came about, Progressive Individual Resources has been part of the treatment provider. And we had that for about 5 years. And we kept complaining to at least giving the feedback to DHS that in our community, we need to know what is the type of illness that people have before they can look for treatment. And so we said, giving us this grant to do treatment is not working. We need to have opportunity to explain to people who are involved in this type of illness of gambling and addiction. And from there, people would likely come for treatment. And that is how we applied for the grant when it came out. And from there, we start to target what will be our focus. So in the application, we said our goal will be to focus our outreach on the sub-Saharan African region, which is about 46 countries within the Minnesota. We try to sustain all the collaborative partners with leading African organizations. Now, this how it works is when we have organization with the community, it is important we look at their leaders and seek them out so that we partner with them. So we have their names listed in our application, and we allotted some funding to them because we want them to lead this. When we go into each community, we kind of lay back and let them discuss it, because those leaders are the trusted messenger within their community. And that is how we develop that and have like 5 partners, which include community organizations as well as faith-based organizations. Because a lot of time when you go to faith-based, either Christian or Muslim, they have their imams and pastors, and those are the leaders. And so we see them as gatekeepers. And if they open the door, we'll be able to enter it. And so that was why we included them in this project, to create this culturally relevant outreach and education through the community. And that is how that works. Next slide. Now the map here, you see the African, and then we see the sub-Saharan African. So the sub-Saharan African is people that have representative here in Minnesota, and we do outreach monthly with them to get their feedback on how gambling is affecting their community.
Okay, so I'll take it up from here. Sorry, it was labeled wrong. This is sub-Saharan Africa. This is the map of the whole of Africa, and this part is the sub-Saharan Africa. And believe it or not, like Dr. Oni said, all these countries have representation here in Minnesota. So Dr. Oni has talked about our goals. Now, how do we achieve these goals? He's talked about outreach to new and established African communities. And like he said, we can't just approach the communities. We have to go through each community. Each of these 46 countries have community leaders. And luckily, Dr. Oni is a community leader within the Nigeria community. So he had a lot of connections in that area. So we're able to reach out to other community leaders and able to, okay, now we want to do this outreach. How do we approach your community, right? And then we'll utilize a culturally specific community-based model and tailored approaches. What this simply means is we're going through the cultural lens of each community. Yes, we're Africans. We're from different parts of Africa, but we don't know each other's culture. So we want to capture it through the cultural lens of each community so that the outreach we're doing can be very effective. So kind of collaborating with the community leaders, as well as asking them, how do you approach this within your culture? What's gambling called within your culture? How do people navigate, so that was just an important aspect. And of course, engage in culturally relevant community conversations about problem gambling and its effects. So like I said earlier, we approach the leaders, we ask them, how do we approach this? We just don't want to barge into your community and people think, oh yeah, we're the experts. We're not, yeah, we might be experts in gambling addiction, but we're not experts in your culture. So that was a helpful piece. Now, our collaborations, I'm going to go ahead and talk about, Dr. Oni and I will go back and forth and talk about the people who have collaborated so far and what did we find. So our first collaboration was with the Cameroonian community. Now, if you look at this flyer, this was written in Cameroonian Pidgin English. So a lot of African countries have the way they communicate, and not everybody, like in Cameroon is English speaking and French speaking, but they do have this broken English where everybody speaks. So we approached the community leader. She came up with this poster. Everything is in Cameroonian Pidgin English, which Dr. Oni and I don't really speak, but we're able to understand. So she conducted the session. She took over the session. She conducted it in Cameroonian Pidgin. Of course, she spoke like regular English too, and then we went back and forth. This made the community members comfortable enough to participate. And I think they were one of the most open communities that we have talked to because they shared everything, this is what we do, this is how our people take gambling, so it was really, really informative, and we're able to, and at the end of each session that we did, we had surveys, so to be able to know how the community is thinking, and which direction we're going. And then our next collaboration was with a TV station owned by the Kenyan community, 2 people from the Kenyan community. So we did several sessions on their TV station talking about gambling addiction. We had like 3,000 views at times. So talking to people, and we did not only talk to the Kenya community because it was a TV program. We had people from other African countries. We even had people all the way from Africa joining in to participate, talk about gambling addiction. So this was a good avenue for us. Another collaboration that we have done is with Russel Herder. I'm sure a lot of people know Russel Herder. There is an ad agency. They're helping us with solidifying our social media presence. So they are doing the graphics, and what we did with them is very interesting. We're using African proverbs. So we supply the African proverbs and they supply the graphics to these African proverbs because our people from our community are very visual. So, if you take a look, I don't know if you guys can see clearly, this proverb is, the ocean never swallows a person whose leg it does not come in contact with. So basically that means if you don't dabble into gambling, then you will not become addicted. And they provided this graphic where this guy is sitting on top of the hill, and we all know that if one leg touches that water, he's going to drown. So that's very visual. That's something that people from our community will appreciate. And these are other graphics, that we that they provided. Dr. Oni.
Well, we also, like we said, we go through some communities. This is another community called the Minnesota Institute for Nigerian Development. They have about 15,000 Nigerians in Minnesota. And so we had this collaboration, and the lady beside me there, not Bili, is the president of the organization. So they will take the lead, and we just stand behind, and if they have questions, we answer their questions. So these are the people now that will take this to the entire community viewed this on the Zoom and participated. And each time when we have this, we make sure that people are giving some incentive like gift card, and people will just mail it to them after they finished or completed the survey. And that has been very exciting for people because they know that we are not taking them for granted. Next one. This is another Voice of Hope. It's a faith-based organization, and they have been very, very supportive of this because the pastor, who is also Pastor Loved, had what they call podcast. And every time when we had this, it will be the leaders, she will make up the flyer, and the community, their church community will be there. And the good thing about it is we also parallel our conversation with what does the Bible say about gambling, because that will really, you meet people where they are and they know that, wow, so this is also related to the Bible or the Quran, depending. So when we bring this up, we always parallel it with what the Bible says and what can you do to stop it or to talk to the group. And so that's been very part of the faith-based contribution.
Okay, so the next faith-based community was the Redeemed Church, the Redeemed Christian Church in St. Paul. The outreach session we had with them was very enlightening because they are, so as we're doing all these faith-based communities, we realize that some are more open than some are more conservative, some would, but we're able to get a lot of information. And there are some faith-based communities that, like, they said, okay, gambling is a sin. And some people said, no, it's not a sin if you're using the money to fund the church. So it was a lot of back and forth. And it was just like, we enjoyed, we learned a lot. And we just like learned that, okay, they're all Christians, but every Christian has different perspectives. So the one with the Redeemed Church was like, and it was a collection of different age groups too. So that helped us a lot to, know how, what's going on. And then another faith-based community was the Seventh-day Adventist Church of Minnetonka. We had a session with them too. And bear in mind that all these churches are all African-led with African members. So that enabled us to get their perspective based on the community. And they too gave us a lot of insight, and people shared a lot. People that have gambled in the past shared a lot, which was like, because people from our community don't really like sharing, but people shared a lot in these communities. Dr.
And, every year we conduct a summit called African Mental Health Summit. So this year we had our 7th African Mental Health Summit, which was virtual. And we presented at the summit on a session. I think we had about eight different sessions. And gambling session, we had about 45 people that attended it, and a lot of questions shared, and they wanted us to even participate again next year. African Mental Health Summit really gathered anywhere from 200 to 500 people at the summit. And when we usually do it, usually be like 2 days, but because of being online, we've been doing only 1 day. And it's been supported by a lot of PMAPs, insurances, and hospitals. So we decided to really talk about gambling there, and we got a very good feedback, and we're looking forward to another session with them.
Okay, the next one is another faith-based community. I think Dr. talked about them briefly. The Ark of Covenant by Pastor Lovett there in Brooklyn Park. That was another avenue we did an in-person session with them as opposed to virtual, and we're able to get a lot of information, and the conversation shifted from gambling to depression and loneliness, which was like, okay, and all these things lead to gambling too. So that gave us insight into why most of the people from our community are gambling. Is it because of loneliness, people are homesick? What's causing it? Trauma, so that gave us a lot of insight. And the next one, I'm trying to go quickly because of time. The next one is we had a session with the University of Minnesota students, like the African, like it was just one University of Minnesota student who helped us to, invite other African students. And we had a lengthy conversation, and they let us know how people are gambling in dorm rooms. I mean, it's something that they see every day. So that gave us a lot of insight into how young people are thinking. And they also let us know that what people are betting on, like, is way different from what, older adults are betting on. So that gave us an insight into how the youth from our community are gambling. Doctor?
Yes, and we do have another organization, community organization called Restoration for All, and they also work with youth and adults. So we had this gambling session with them, and it was conducted by Dr. Ola, and it was a very useful information also because it crosses across the ages and the group of people there. And the good thing about what we've done so far is we know that culture matters, and culture is really important when you know your group and you know how to address them. It has been part of our issue in our community is what they call gossip syndrome. And a lot of time people don't want to know what is going on. And so we are able to break some of those barriers by letting their own leaders be the leading session of our sessions.
Okay, so we've done all this work. We've reached out to several communities. We collected a lot of data. We've seen how people's behaviors are and attitudes, However, we discovered along the way that there are lots of barriers that are preventing people from seeking help within our communities. And what are these barriers? Shame. We all know that gambling, I mean, even regardless of the community, shame is a big part of a barrier to seeking treatment. How will people know? What will people say within the community? How will they know that? I mean, families hide all these things, how will people know within the African community that I'm gambling? That's very shameful. And then the denial of the fact that people just say, oh, gambling can be addictive. It's just entertainment. Somebody said, I go to Vegas every month. I don't think I'm addicted to gambling. I just go for entertainment, things like that. And then trust in the system or the clinician. So people, we still have a lot of work to do in that area in letting people from our community know that this is confidential. It's purely confidential. People are afraid that their story will get out into the community. So people will come up to me and say, look, I'd rather go to a therapist that is way, way, way far from the African community, So those are the things that we need to keep working on to plant that trust. Of course, social stigmatization. There's stigmatization around mental health within the African community as well as addiction. So that's something that we need to continue working on too. And of course, lack of understanding about the disorder, which we always let people know what is gambling, when does it become an addiction and all that. And then of course, lack of awareness about resources available. Some people don't even know, they think, where am I going to start from? If I need a therapist for gambling, where do I start from? Who do I call? So those are the things that we zeroed in, that these are barriers, and those are the things that we're focusing on. Susan, is there time to play a PSA or no?
Yes, we can. Do you have the link on your slide, or do you want to?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Whoa. I do have the link. Can I? Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, go ahead.
I'm trying to play. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So, oh no. It's okay, yeah, it's working. So before I play it, I just want to know that say that this is a PSC that we created in Nigerian Pidgin. Oh, it started. Okay. Can you all hear? Can you hear?
No.
Oh no.
There's a mute button right next to right on the bottom.
Progressive individual.
You got it.
My name is Dr. Felicia Ikebide. The message that we get from now today, na gambling addiction from progressive individual resources for our community. When people get stressed, when they do different things, we no good. Sometimes they go drink, sometimes they go gamble, sometimes they go just overeat. Sometimes our people, they choose say addiction, not only person where they smoke or person where they drink. Sometimes people where they gamble, wetin we dey call kalo addiction. They have to know, because it not be like drug, it not be like say you drink, it not be like headache. you know, they see the sign for body because corner to the block. People think say na plane, I ain't big, but when you dey do am all the time, you no fit pay your rent, you no fit pay mortgage, you no fit send pikin go school, you fit kill yourself, so no get money.
Government get help for people who get gambling addiction, what do they call alikali problem. If you call them, then go talk.
Uh-oh. I don't know what happened.
Well, that's the end of the day.
Anyway,
I
yeah.
did post
I'm going to
both.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it. Okay,
Yeah.
so basically that was a PSA conducted in Nigerian Pidgin English, just a way of like letting people from our community feel comfortable. You know, this is a language I recognize, this is a language I identify with, and these are my people who are trying to talk to me about problem gambling. So that was, that's it. Yeah. So we've come to the end. Susan.
we have just you're almost breathless, Billy.
I know, I was trying to like give all the information.
You have been very productive in your time, and it's wonderful. It is wonderful to see all the work that you are doing, and I've been lucky enough to be able to sit in on some of your sessions. So it's been really wonderful. And I don't see any specific questions, but I just want to say thank you. I know that we have much work to do in Minnesota with regard to making services available that are culturally appropriate. And I really appreciated Ange's use of cultural intelligence versus cultural competency, and I'm going to carry that with me out of this session. And then, as you know, cultural humility. I think within the white community, we have to have some cultural humility to understand that there are other communities that need services that will best serve them. That the traditional model is not appropriate. It does not work for everyone. And so I think the work that you are all doing together will help make a difference in moving that forward. And so I thank you for that work.